Welcome to the last Insights interview of 2021 from the Payments Association. And you know what? I think we've kept the best till last. This month's VIP guest has had a phenomenally successful year. She's the CEO of a fast-growing fintech company, recently described as being at the heart of the fintech revolution, one which is the go-to payments processor for today's leading fintechs, including Revolut, Starling Bank, and Curve. She's also recognized as a leader and influencer in the payments industry, having been selected as one of the top 50 fintech CEOs of 2021 and named as one of the Payments Power 10 for the last 3 years. She has an active ambassadorial role for diversity and inclusion around the world, and was recently named the most inspirational woman in fintech UK by Fintech Times and Great British Businesswoman of the Year in technology. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO of GPS, Joanne Dewar. Hi, Jo.
Hi, Tony. Great to see you.
Phew, what a list of accolades. It's wonderful, and it's a pleasure to be able to ask you a few questions. And thank you for sharing your insights with our community.
Delighted to be with you, Tony.
So let's start at the beginning. At the start of every Insights interview, I ask my guests how they stay motivated. You know, what makes them go the extra mile when faced with balancing challenging jobs and home lives that involve considerable stress. So, Joe, what is it that actually continues to motivate you almost a decade after entering the payments industry?
Tony, it's genuinely the case that whilst we as a underlying technology provider, as an issuer processor, we support a large variety of use cases from challenger banks to e-wallet providers and various other things. The thing that brings me to work each morning is actually the financial inclusion agenda. I know that we are powering products and powering cards that is enabling people who would not otherwise have access to a bank account or online payment capabilities, the ability to participate in life. And without the product that we're enabling, and without each transaction being successful, it would genuinely leave those people in difficulties. So it's been the case ever since I sort of first got involved in the business, even more so as we've been powering more and more of these kind of solutions. And as you know, there's lots of different pockets of communities that are excluded, and lots of different sort of fintech-based solutions for different communities. And as such, we put that into our mission statement as our organization. We say we exist to empower, to create financial empowerment for everyone. And so as we grow and scale our business and extend globally, I think about providing that capability. And equally, when there are challenges, it's that type of customer is the one that's front of mind. Where we all as an industry went through the Wirecard issues last summer, it was that use case, that scenario that was sort of top of mind. On payday, there are thousands of individuals who this was their only source of funds. This was their only source of paying for their bus or paying for their food. And that's why it's all quite so important. So certainly what gets me out of bed in the mornings and what drives me forwards.
It's funny, isn't it? The Wirecard situation seems like sometime in the dark and distant past, although I hope the lessons have been learned, and I think they have been across the industry. But you know what? When somebody said to you, how do you fancy being a CEO of a company that actually sits at the heart of the fintech ecosystem, becoming the CEO, what was it that encouraged you to take it on? It's a big job, big responsibility. And as you just mentioned, lots of people depend upon you.
I think at the time of the transition, which is now 3.5 years ago, we as GPS weren't really thinking that we were at the heart of the fintech revolution. We were just getting on with our job. And it's only really the narrative has evolved over time. And, we, the UK, has been sort of more aware of how we've led fintech revolution around the world, and every other market has looked back to the UK, whether it's to the regulator or to the ecosystem parties or the fintechs themselves to say, well, how did they do that? And we want to do something similar. I think at the time we just weren't conscious that we were doing something as special as we were. So it was sort of just a very natural progression for me, as opposed to seeing it as a big step change.
Yeah, because you were sort of nurtured in the fraternity and the family and of the company. It's not as if you got a call from a headhunter who said, right, come and do this job.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I'd previously been responsible for onboarding and then COO. So I was, in the heart of the delivery and the doing of the company for a number of years before becoming CEO. I think the big difference was really, until that point, I'd had an inward and downward role. So I was focused on delivery. I wasn't doing this kind of thing. I wasn't sort of the public face of the company and sort of driving the sort of exposure and storytelling.
It's funny though, isn't it? Because when I spoke to you, must have been, or maybe a couple of years ago, maybe a little bit longer, and you said, I'm not very comfortable doing the outward going role. It's new for me, and I honestly acknowledge you for being an outstanding public speaker. You're really always animated and inspirational and clear. How did you manage to then go from focusing internally to externally?
I took myself on a journey, is the honest story. I knew it was something that I was anxious about, but I needed to do in order to be able to fulfill my role. And I just sort of went about it programmatically, which is kind of how I go through other aspects of my role, and thought, right, I just need to lean forward and do a first event. And the first event I chose was very small, very safe topic as well. We're on a panel with others who were very supportive, and I did that. Actually, that wasn't as scary as I thought, and so it's like, okay, 1 out of 1 went well. Right, let's take a second one. So the second one, I did a panel, but I was narrating and coordinating the panel as opposed to being a participant. So I thought, well, no one's going to be asking me any difficult questions, so I'm going to be the one asking the questions. Mm-hmm. And so 2 out of 2 went well, then 3 out of 3. And so I sort of built the experience such that, after 10 or 15, and now I've lost count, you kind of start to think, okay, actually, it's not all going to go horribly wrong. Then I've ended up doing a couple of sort of really sort of bigger, scarier things. So I've done a couple of live interviews on Sky News, for example, where you're told, there's a 2.2 million audience. And they're really scary moments. But actually, once you've done those scary moments, you can start telling yourself, well, I'm going to do this interview or this speech, but it's not going to be as scary as that. So if I can do that, then I can do this. I think through COVID, where there's been so much that have participated in working from home, again, that's a safer environment than physically standing up in front of 600, 700, 800 people. And again, having done what I've done, I've done a number of keynotes from my spare bedroom at sort of 5 o'clock in the morning and different things. Yes. And you sort of rewrite the narrative in your brain. You think, yeah, I can do this.
Bearing in mind that they say that of the top 3 things that people are most scared about, after death and divorce, people are most scared of public speaking. I think what you've said will be very reassuring to many people out there who aspire to have the public presence you have. And actually, you've said exactly how to go about doing it. So thank you for those tips. It's really helpful.
Exactly right. And I think, one of the important things for those of us who do get the opportunity to now sort of speak up, have that moment with the microphone, is to help demonstrate how the opportunity is more accessible to other people than they may be led to believe. Because, they see the likes of now you and I speaking with great comfort and think, well, of course you can do that. You've always been able to do that. In the same way as you speak to somebody who, I don't know, a few years ago, I ran the London Marathon, and they'd say, oh, yeah, because you're a runner. And it's like, no, it's not because I was ever a runner. I just decided I wanted to be able to do it. and I
Yes.
trained myself to be able to do it. And just being able to just make it more accessible for other people, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, very good. It's leadership by example. I love it. So let's remember where the people who are reading this, who are listening to this, will be just approaching the Christmas break. It's traditionally a time, not just of celebration, although knowing the payments industry, we'll be doing lots of that, but of reflection, looking back. And my word, what a year you guys have had at GPS. You've raised $300 million to fuel your growth just a few weeks ago. It looks like you're going to surpass the 1.3 billion transactions. Let me say that again. 1,300 million transactions that you processed last year by the end of November, I hope, which will be a new record. I mean, what a phenomenal year. Let's not talk too much about what great things you've done, but I want to hear about how hard it's been. What has been, honestly, and I know you well enough and you know me well enough, what's the hardest obstacle you've needed to overcome this year, and how did you overcome it?
So I think the biggest challenge for me has been growing new teams in new geographies without being able to physically meet them. I think running BAU in a COVID environment where you've got teams that are established, they know each other, they know the culture of the business, and then you can just crack on with things. That's one, that's been much easier to do. But growing a new team in where you're starting from scratch, so there's nothing to latch onto, there's no one for them to physically meet, to be able to just get that sense, that essence of what you are as a company. You can recruit for skills and experience, but actually sort of imparting that essence of who you are and what you stand for is quite hard to really achieve. I think what we've done within those constraints has been very exciting. So we managed, we had the start point of our Singapore team in 2019, so it's before COVID hit, but we only just started building out our Australia team in 2020. And in normal environments, we would have had the team over here for sort of extended induction, and then sort of being able to spend regular time out there as well. What we've done in addition to that is actually set up and launched in MENA in Dubai during this last year, which I'm thrilled that we've achieved. We had a fantastic trip over there end of September, at which we had our official launch. And, it just reinforced that once we were actually managed to spend the time physically together, it was fantastic, really animated, and we're going great guns, but, genuinely sort of driving that kind of growth without having any physical interaction.
It's something we don't talk about very often in business, which is the importance of enjoying the work we do, importance of having fun, and it's a little bit harder if we're stuck in our rooms with our little boxes to actually have fun. You can do that, but it's often easier when you're together and you have a chance to kind of throw ideas around and have the informality of getting to know each other personally. That's a lot easier to do when you're actually face to face.
Yeah, and it helps kind of break the ice and break the formality of the relationships between the team members and the big executive that are at head office or whatever you want to see as that. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. Yeah, we're all here to enjoy our job and make friendships as well. And it's that bit that's slightly harder to do when it's just on a screen.
So, and looking back, what about perhaps the things you're most proud of this year, personally as a CEO?
So, yeah, it has to be getting this transaction over the line. So, what I've achieved together with my team is brought new partners into the business to be able to, who share exactly the same vision as to where the opportunity is for us. So this is Advent International, sort of one of the top 10 PE houses in the world, Viking Global, who are a crossover fund based in the US, They both have real expertise and experience in payments. They share the vision that we do in terms of where the opportunity lies. They believe in us, and they want to, they've got the depth of pockets to be able to help us achieve our ambition, which is, it's game changing for us.
Very, very cool. There were a few late nights, I imagine.
Quite a few, yes. For some reason, deals always get actually signed at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's just one of those things.
It is so strange. I've heard that so often.
You end up with all these sort of stories of trying to persuade, night security guards or night duty hotel managers to be witness to signing documents and that kind of thing, because of being a hybrid environment as opposed to being in the same office as lawyers and things. So
how funny! Yes, you hope you kind of get to the point at which you're grinding them down, and eventually at 3 o'clock in the morning, you all go, "Well, let's just do it."
Yeah.
So look, let's talk about something now that you and I both care a great deal about. It's something that our community has been doing some work over the years, both formally and informally, to address, which is, trying to do with gender diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Some research I've seen recently suggests that the fintech industry has a systematic gender diversity problem, which is quite a strong thing to say. And women make up barely 11% of all board members and 19% of company executives. Now, I know you're an inspirational role model. I'm sure there's lots of people out there, both men looking for ways of addressing a problem that they know is not right, and women who want to be able to change those numbers significantly. What do you think the industry needs to do to accelerate the pace of change?
It's a hard question to answer in a snappy way in a couple of minutes, but I think there's already there are several attempts. I think there's a lot of activity that's showing willing. I think that the move towards more flexible working is going to make a material difference, both in terms of the hybrid, working from home versus working in the office, and also what seems to come hand in hand in that is the more flexibility of hours and expectations within that. I think, again, thanks to COVID, we've all humanized a bit more. So we're more aware of, families, pets, elderly relatives living in the same household, or whatever the wider circumstances are that make you who you are, not just an employee. And I think that it's so important, whether you're male or female, to not make out that you are the superhero.
Yeah, and I think men tend to be, and the research suggests men are more naturally able to put themselves forward in that role, or with that label, even when they're not. And that's maybe there's a sort of an insight there somewhere as well.
Yeah, so I mean, part of how I've managed to do what I'm doing is not that I'm any form of superhero. I've actually, had a pathway where I took a significant period out of 7 years raising a family, and for the last 7 years, I did a full role swap with my husband, and he's taken primary responsibility for the children. So, me achieving what I've achieved whilst having sort of three school-age children is because of of having a very supportive family, and so in part to enable women to be able to achieve more in some circumstances. I mean, not every woman is a mother by any stretch of the imagination, but that there is a correlation clearly, and we have to be able to sort of normalize what's possible for men as well, to enable sort of more opportunities for women. So
I agree, and I really think we must continue to have this conversation. and make sure that companies are prepared to adopt new sets of policies, new employment and recruitment and paternity and maternity leave policies to reflect this new conversation. It's not as if the problem is solved yet. And I think it's going to take some years. And these things do take years, and certainly with your leadership.
Exactly. It's many years. And it's, if I was to use my husband's example, he started his period of sort of career leave so I started work when my youngest was sort of 3.5, 4. So, so he's taken a leave of absence. He's just gone back to work now from the youngest being 4 years old. So that doesn't necessarily qualify from a paternity leave perspective, but and actually he took out rather than from a particular role. But actually, sort of having the acceptance when you're looking at a CV and thinking, okay, that person as a male took 3, 4, 5 years out, but that's okay and that's good, and seeing that in a positive light in the same way as you'd hope someone saw it from a female perspective. One of the things that I've tried to be more vocal about is the fact that I did take that time off, because when I first came into the industry, where people say, well, how long have you been at GPS? And you say, yeah, I've been here, 6 months, a year, or whatever. And then the next question is always, well, where were you before? And I felt at the time that saying, well, actually, I've been at home with the kids for the last 7 years would be seen entirely negatively. And I was doing charity work and all that kind of thing. Yes, but yes. My answer used to be, oh, yeah, I used to have a career in consulting. So that's where I was before. And I would skip over that middle part of the narrative. Wow. Well, in skipping over that piece, I'm not educating either for my own circumstance, but also for whoever I'm talking to, whether they're male or female. Yep. They've got a wife, a sister, a neighbour, a cousin, a son or daughter that they're trying to help figure out what are the possibilities in life. Brilliant. So, that's some of the things I've started doing. But as you say, these are big questions that we all need to lean into, male and female. And yet, even when we all lean into, they're all going to take considerable time to resolve.
They will. Let's talk a little bit about something that hasn't taken as much time as I was expecting, which is the penetration of you guys in Asia Pacific and MENA. Next-gen fintech such as GPS. You're out there innovating all the time. You're market leader here in the UK, but you're expanding. Where do you see the greatest potential in those two markets, and why? We'll do 5 minutes on that, and then I've a few questions for you at the end too.
Yeah, sure. So the opportunity is genuinely everywhere. We're almost spoilt for choice in terms of which markets and actually, which use cases. We support so many different use cases, from banking service providers to digital banks to, whether it's buy now, pay later is the latest sort of buzz offering, yes. Crypto disbursements, everything else. So opportunities genuinely in every single direction. And as we've found, so many different countries are, from a government and regulatory perspective, and everything else, thinking, right, fintech's the next big thing. We're going to lean into this. We're going to make it easier to do business. We're going to make this our core offering. We're going to sort of learn from the FCA and put in place our regulatory sandboxes and everything else. So and one of the amazing things through COVID plus technology innovation is it's been a great leveler. Every market almost in the world at the same point in time is having a move away from cash, an adoption of the smartphone, the rise of the smartphone app, the move away from physical presence at branch, the rise of e-commerce. All of these themes and trends are universal, global, and need servicing. At the same time, the homegrown fintechs are looking. No one launches a fintech and thinks, right, I'm just going to be this market only. Everyone's thinking, right, I'm going to be the next big thing globally. So as a service provider to the fintechs, we have to, be able to support our customers as they grow.
Yes. So it was led by customers initially, like the Revoluts, and that now allowed you to have a platform in a particular district or region, and then you decided to establish yourselves fully there. Is that how it worked?
No, exactly right. So Revolut wanted to expand their footprint. So our first forays into Asia Pac were with them for Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Japan. We equally had then actually, customers coming and finding us from Hong Kong, from Australia and other places who were lifting the lid on the secret success of the various players in the UK and Europe and proactively sort of pulling us in that direction. We could have gone to the US and LATAM as well. It's exactly the same opportunity, but it came down to bandwidth and focus. We couldn't spread ourselves too thin in one shot. But what's certainly the case is as we, get established in these other regions, it's a bit like going on holiday where, you say, right, I'm going to go to Singapore and I'm going to go and see Asia. And you come back from Singapore and think, well, I've only seen Singapore. I haven't even been to Malaysia, let alone Thailand, let alone the Philippines. And all of these markets, have their own needs. They're all slightly different. The regulatory regimes are all slightly different, but is there the same common base demand? Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. And US, are you interested in the North American markets?
So as it stands, we're supporting our existing customers as they seek to extend into the US.
Do you know what? I think it's a tough market. I hear N26 has just pulled out, having spent a long time and loads of money trying to establish themselves as a bank there. And they pulled out of the UK too. I think both are difficult markets if you're not based in there. And US, I believe, has its own challenges in terms of payments and financial services. I think it's hard to crack it, but I know some people do. So very good. Thank you for that insight. Let's talk now about the other thing that you are a huge supporter of is community and this sense of the importance of collaborating and working with other like-minded, passionate payments people, as we call them. You've been a big supporter of the Payments Association. Why has that been important to you, Jo?
Well, we are an ecosystem-centered industry. Nothing works without other players as well. For us to put to work with any customer, we are part of a larger thing, and we have a huge number of relationships with other organisations where they're either sort of bringing their BIN sponsorship capabilities, their KYC, the card manufacturing, all this kind of thing. And with our customers, we're putting different propositions together for different customers. But there's no doubt that the secret to the success of the UK in leading the fintech revolution, yes, in part it was the FCA, large part the FCA, in large part it was the availability of capital and tech talent as well. But the capabilities of that ecosystem of this community is a large part of the success of the UK, that it isn't established elsewhere around the world. And we are at that center point. There's lots of different players who all seem to be integrated to us in some shape or form. And, we're proud to play that part sort of physically in the ecosystem with all those physical integrations, but also from a relationship perspective.
I think you do, and you do a great job there. So we've just rebranded, as you know, to the Payments Association. What do you think that implies for the role that the community body should play in the future? You guys are active on the advisory board, and also you mentioned earlier, there's so much opportunity. Where should we focus our efforts?
So I think it was the right time to own the fact that what we all do has come of age. We're no longer this sort of thing off to the side
Exactly.
of mainstream payments. And, whether it's through acquisition and roll up or direct integrations, when you look at our customer list and now see we've got, whether it's RBS or Klarna or PayPal or SocGen or whatever, it's just like, this is mainstream stuff now. This is not the playground. So it feels like it was exactly the right thing to do, to own the fact that, this is now mainstream. This is it. So I hadn't really thought about it until, the rebranding's come about, but it's absolutely the right thing to have done. So
where should we focus our efforts then? Where, there's 150 companies, several thousand people, several hundred people will be listening to this. Where should we be focusing the community's efforts?
So one of the things that I'd really like to see it encouraged is continuing the focus and role around networking, but achieving that at the next level of detail down in the organizations. So, I've hugely benefited myself through the Payments Association and its previous guises in terms of the network that it's helped me develop. But, the way, a number of the network opportunities are constructed, they don't allow for me to be able to sort of drop that ladder down to enable the next sort of 20 or so people inside the organization to sort of leverage and gain that same benefit. So if I was to have a sort of a single desire, it would be to figure out how we do that at the next level down. So, it becomes not about the CEO roundtable, but here's an opportunity for, and it's equally not just a sort of a sales driven perspective either, but think actually, how do we get the onboarding specialists from multiple organizations around the ecosystem to get together for networking, for collaboration, for thinking the way forwards. So if I was to have a single thing, it would be that.
I like it very much. Thank you very much for that tip. Now, final question, which we also ask everyone, which is, what advice would you give a new graduate who approached you thinking about following in your footsteps?
My footsteps. It's an exciting world out there. There's a lot of so much opportunity, so many people to learn from. I think the overriding thing comes, everyone talks about, I remember this when I was a grad, you need to try and understand the culture of an organization, and thinking, how do you understand culture of an organization? It's not something that is really accessible to the outside world necessarily to understand. But I think if there was a single thing to try and figure out where you're best going to grow, is to really ask around to understand what culture of an organization means. What are the questions to ask to understand culture? So, for us, that would be, have you actually got a graduate development program, or are you looking for a graduate person to come and fulfill a singular role? So what is the investment in me? And, try and also lift the lid on, everyone will pay people on their websites, or as they sell their organizations, they'll pay, the lip service to diversity and inclusion or ESG or, purpose and all this kind of thing. Every company will have something, but try and sort of just lift the lid and think, right, what's really there, and who's really walking the walk and not just talking the talk. And, some of those things, they can be quite hard to lift the lid, but actually now with social media, they are becoming easier. And, a great example would be, on the diversity and inclusion. I've been somebody that, I am someone that tries to walk the walk. And so where, we've all as a country sort of tried to figure out our responses to the Black Lives Matter movement, I was determined to actually learn what we could do as an organization. And, I didn't want to sort of just have a black square on Twitter for a day and then you've moved on to the next theme for the next week. But what does it really mean? Mm. And, that what it really means does create some form of footprint over time. So, you'd find that actually, there's a webinar that I've been on a panel of that's actually talking about what I've actually done in the business on our Advancing Black Pathways program. And that's, a great example of, okay, that's not just something that's said on some literature.
Yes.
That's actually, okay, this CEO who is, busy as anything, doing the global growth agenda, getting a big investment over the line, everything else, I'm putting my time and energy and interest into this program. Okay, so that really means something.
Yes,
it's not lip service. So culture's a really, really hard thing to get to underneath. But if you can, then I think that's the single most important thing.
Very, very good advice for every good new graduate that's coming through the system. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your insights on the Insights interview. It's been a pleasure to talk. Lots of great insights, not just for the new people, but also for the established people, whatever their gender and diversity condition. So please, thank you very much indeed for your time. Joanne Dewar from GPS. Thank you, Jo.
Thank you very much.